Hi, everyone, and welcome to Happy Not Satisfied. My name is Dan Morrison, and I'm the founder of Happy Not Satisfied and the host of this podcast. I have an incredible guest with me today. He is a celebrity chef, and I think kind of in both senses of the term, that he's been a chef to celebrities, and he's also turning into somewhat of a celebrity himself based on some of the footage I saw from him on the news and KTLA and just kind of crushing it. But he's worked with the NFL, with the NBA, the Olympics, individual athletes, in making them healthier and stronger and more nourished while eating delicious food. And he's an amazing guy, and I've had the honor of eating his food, I will say, and it's incredible. So super excited to have Chef Brett Eisen today. Thank you for joining.
Dan, thank you for having me. It is an honor to be on this podcast with you.
That's nice of you to say, but the honor truly is all mine. So I think it would be really interesting. You have sort of a niche career, and maybe something that people aren't super familiar with what that looks like. And I know a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you do, but maybe if you could talk about kind of your story and how you got to where you are, and also what a day looks like for you, to just give everyone some context. I think that'd be super interesting.
All right, sounds good. Where to start? I was lucky enough to know from a very young age, and I'm talking like second grade, first grade, that I wanted to be a chef. Something I always said to my parents and to my friends. And part of that reasoning is because, I was this very anxious, stressed out, overwhelmed with OCD and superstitions young kid. And when I took a step into the kitchen, all that kind of went away. All that stress, all those negative thoughts, anything just went away. And that really showed me that that's where I was supposed to be, in a kitchen. The focus that it took to create a meal was it just made sense to me. And the reason I stepped foot in a kitchen in second grade is because the food at my school was terrible. And the only way I didn't have to eat it was if I packed my own lunch. So that's what really got me into the kitchen at such a young age. And what was cool about it, I would open the fridge of what my mom had made the night before, and I'd take all the ingredients out and I'd try and make something new with it. And that's what I would bring to lunch. So yeah, that's where my cooking began. And I've been chasing after this dream of mine to be a chef for my whole life. And I'm talking, so my second grade flow chart project was how ketchup was made. My fifth grade science fair project was a solar pizza oven. My bar mitzvah when I was in middle school was kicking it up a notch with Brett, which was the Emerald saying. And I had people come and donate pots and pans to our food bank in St. Louis. And so, yeah, it just shows that like this is what I was always passionate about and meant to do, and where I felt most like myself. So then in high school, I got more into, cooking, and got an opportunity to work at a restaurant. And it wasn't for me, which was a little shocking that I loved cooking so much. But when I went into a restaurant, it just the environment, doing the same thing every single day, it just didn't attract me to that cooking lifestyle. But still knew I wanted to be a chef, and thought to myself, there has to be different other pathways to go down that I could do what I want to do, which was cook food. So in high school, I was looking at colleges, and ended up going out to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, which was, the very famous culinary school, and where you could become the best chef and own a restaurant and stuff like that. While I was there was a girl in my group who had mentioned this school called Johnson and Wales. And I had never heard of it. I mean, it was a funny name to me at first, Johnson and Wales, and didn't know much about it. But I knew after I'd left the Culinary Institute of America, after going to visit it, it wasn't for me. Just like working in the restaurant, doing the same thing every day, very just cooking, and that's it. So looked more into Johnson and Wales and saw that they offered a really cool degree, which was 4 years of culinary as well as 4 years of nutrition science. So you could get a bachelor's in culinary arts as well as a bachelor's in nutrition science, but totally combined. And so that really, a light bulb went off in my head, like, whoa, this is an opportunity to cook not just in a restaurant. So that's where, that's how I got into really cooking and going to this culinary school and figuring out a different path of how can I cook, you know, not just walking into a restaurant and clocking in and clocking out and that's it. So yeah, that's kind of the story about how I got into cooking, and yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, it's super interesting that the restaurant life wasn't for you, but cooking was.
Right.
And I love that you kind of found the sort of perfect fit to then launch you into kind of, I think what you did for your career, which I know you were connected with the Broncos and like the Kings and a bunch of other stuff. So how did that all come about? And like, what are some of the highlights from that part of your life?
So again, when I was in high school, the school I went to, Johnson Wales, held a contest every year that was a national high school chef of the year contest.
Hmm.
And I had heard about it, and my junior year of high school, I had the opportunity to compete in it, but I wasn't really confident in my abilities, and I was more focused on playing sports in high school than cooking, and so I didn't really think too much about it. But then as I got into my senior year, I knew that contest was still going to happen because it happened each year. And I ended up just coming back from a trip to Israel. I did the whole Jewish kid in high school junior year, go to Israel during the summer, came back and was a little more inspired with food. I was able to, kind of get out of the bubble in St. Louis and experience more culture and more flavors. And so I think I came back a little more excited about food, which got me then to enter this contest. I ended up entering the contest. Long story short, I made top 10 through my recipe and kind of, all the thinking of what the recipe that I submitted, flavors and all that. So anyway, got sent to Miami to compete against 9 other kids from around the country and ended up winning this contest. And so I was awarded a 4-year full tuition scholarship to Johnson and Wales, which
Wow.
was wild. But what that did is when I went to school, I didn't necessarily have to think about getting a job immediately
Mm.
because I got a scholarship to school. So it was more, being present and learning and studying and going to school, but not having to worry about, paying my tuition and being in debt and stuff like that. So what that did is it gave me the opportunity to really put myself out there and just kind of, be this big-eyed kid and try and grab opportunities that, were out there, and connected with a chef of mine and who was one of my teachers, and he got me an internship with the Denver Broncos. So this was in 2008, and the cool thing about the internship, it was a free internship. So I was, an unpaid internship. So I did it because I was able to, and very lucky and grateful that I was able to, because what that did is it opened the door to the sports world for me. So I was 18 years old. I was going to the Broncos facility really early in the morning. And again, this was about 15 years ago, and the sports nutrition stuff wasn't really happening. Most teams you would think had dietitians and had chefs in their practice facilities, but that wasn't the case. So I think timing too was a big part of it. That I got this internship with the Broncos because they had just hired a dietitian, they had just hired chefs to do all in-house cooking. It was brand new. They brought interns on to, cut fruit, and I worked the omelet bar, and was making all the players omelets in the morning. And then I was going back to school and doing my classes and stuff like that. So I would say my freshman year, I had this opportunity with the Broncos, and it was a niche I knew it'd be a niche to have the science of nutrition and the knowledge about it, but could also hand you a really delicious plate of food. So yeah, that kind of opened my eyes to the sports world and how I could be a chef in the sports world.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm super interested in just nutrition and how that affects our bodies. And like I experiment
Mm,
all the time with what I'm eating and how it's affecting me. And I have my Whoop tracker and how I ate
yeah.
affected my recovery and all this stuff. But I know that I'm a little like extreme about it. And I don't think the average person wants to go down that rabbit hole. But I do think something that you talk about a lot that I really appreciate is that you can have and make food that tastes good, that is
Hmm.
also fueling you and good for your body and not going to necessarily like spike your blood sugar and do all kinds of crazy things. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be one or the other, healthy or tastes good. Um,
Right.
so I guess I'd be curious, like how you figured out how to do all that, and like what is your thought process behind making that happen?
Yeah, so I definitely give a lot of credit to Johnson and Wales. What was cool about it is I would go to a class, soup, stocks, and sauces, where we learn how to make soup, stocks, and sauces. But then right after that class, I'd go to anatomy physiology.
Mm,
And from anatomy physiology, I'd go to knife cutting class. And
mm,
from knife cutting class, I'd go to biochemistry.
wow.
Biochemistry, I'd go to meat cutting class. And then from meat cutting, I'd go to, Chem 1, Chem 2. So basically from there, it was just combining the two, right? Having the knowledge, the science about how we're all how we're all completely different. We're all individual. And yeah, so it really, gave me the opportunity to really become an amazing chef, learn how to cook amazing food, but then immediately go to learn about the person I'm cooking for,
Yeah.
their specific needs, their specific goals. And so, yeah, I really knew that I could work with somebody and cook for a purpose, but then also hand them a delicious plate of food.
Yeah.
So that really got me more excited about cooking. And the thing I said, cooking for a purpose, was, something I didn't find in restaurants. And so when I found this combination, it really felt good.
Yeah. And you were saying how everybody's different with, well, with everything, but with food in particular,
Right.
I think it's a common misconception that there is like a one size fits all way to eat that's going
Right.
to be great. And I say that because I even see it between, my wife and I, and what affects me and makes me foggy might make her feel great and vice versa.
Right.
What would your advice be to people that want to kind of find a better way maybe of eating that works for them, that aren't necessarily like in a place to hire a personal chef or something like that? Like
Yeah.
how can we all be better about that, and sort of discover some of that for ourselves?
Well, I know, one thing is it's not easy.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely takes a lot of effort to, not only plan what you're going to eat, but understand what works for you. And then obviously cooking the food for yourself. So there's lots of steps and lots of things you got to do to really make that happen. But my first thing, eat real food. And what's that? It's real ingredients. If you take 2 bags of potato chips, and one bag has potatoes, sea salt, and olive oil, and then the other bag has a list of like 40 ingredients, you'll choose the potatoes, olive oil, sea salt. So that's always my first thing, is just telling people to, check that bag, and just, if it's real, eat it. If it's not, skip over it. And what that does is it takes away all the processed food and all the junk. And it seems that when you're eating real ingredients, it becomes easier to digest and gives you a bit more energy. And again, you got to find what works for you. Not all of us are waking up at 4 a.m. to go work out. So obviously you need that early morning energy boost, and also recover right as you're done working out around 5 or 6, when most of us are waking up to get our day started. So again, it's based on your schedule throughout the day, but you want to start simple, which is just trying to eat real ingredients, but in moderation.
Yeah.
That's kind of always what I tell my guys.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I speak about happy not satisfied sometimes, and I always put like these tangible things at the end, because I feel like there has to be like a foundation of wellness within yourself to have the mental
Mm-hmm.
clarity to then go on to the other steps of it. And one of the
Exactly.
I have these 5 sort of things I always talk about. One of them is eat less junk, which is kind of like along the lines of eat real food, right? It's like it doesn't have to be overly complicated. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
a great starting point. And if we were
Right.
honest with ourselves and really did that, it would probably make a big difference. So I think that's
Definitely.
great advice. So you've worked with like all these teams and done amazing stuff, and now you're working for yourself, right? Like what does that look like? I think that's even more sort of niche even than working for like a sports
Yeah.
team.
No, yeah, it's great. I've worked for lots of teams, like the actual like organizations, and been part of the teams. And But also that gave me the opportunity to interact with athletes and, realize that they're not just doing all that stuff at the facility. All that stuff carries out of the facility when they leave, whether it's, getting massages to help with recovery, or going to Pilates class, or going to a yoga class, or any of that. So, I also realized that I didn't need to just work for an organization, but I could work outside of an organization, specifically with athletes. And that's when I started to personal chef. And that was really cool because, again, I knew players from the teams that I'd worked with, but also it was a niche thing I was doing, which was athletes saw that I knew nutrition, and I wasn't just, I wasn't a dietitian telling them to eat broccoli, brown rice, and chicken, but, we were elevating that broccoli, brown rice, and chicken and making it exciting and fun. But I really fell in love with not working just for a whole team, but for a specific individual, and doing everything in my power to help them reach their goals and maximize their performance and be the best athlete, not only on the field, but off the field as well. So, I'm an entrepreneur now, I guess you'd say. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, very lucky to be in a city where a lot of this stuff is going on. A lot of athletes live, and a lot of health conscious and, wellness and all that kind of good stuff. And
Yeah.
the abundance of amazing produce and food out here. Just, yeah, it's been great being a private chef. So I'm really enjoying it.
That's cool. And yeah, I don't know if we said this, but the city Brett's referring to is Los Angeles, which definitely
Yeah.
all of those things is true. And of course, I was in LA and I moved recently, and we were having lots of weird weather for a long time. And I swear the day I left, it became perfect again. So I'm a little bummed
It's
about
been
that.
summers. It's
Yeah.
been summer since you left.
Yeah. And then I'm in San Antonio now, and it's been what they're calling it is a heat dome, and it's been over like 104 here for like the past 2 weeks. I got
Uh,
here and that started, and then in LA the perfect weather started. So I
oh
don't know
my
what's going on there.
goodness.
Anyway, I digress. I think I'm super inspired by your story because you continue to find like the specific thing that really matches your skill set and your personality and what makes you
Mm,
tick. And it's like I feel like you're always kind of on the lookout for that and aware of that. And what I love about talking to people on this podcast is I feel that about everybody, even though some people are in massive corporations, some people are in small companies like you're working for yourself. But it seems like this common thread is that everyone is always sort of trying to find where they fit in the best and match their
mm,
skills with what they enjoy and all these things. And I say all that because I think it kind of ties into the whole happy, not satisfied idea.
mm,
And so I've talked to you a little bit about it, and I think you know about it. And I obviously talk about it on here. It's the name of the podcast, but like this idea of finding joy from the process of continuous growth. And like it's not for you, it's like you figured out you wanted to cook in second grade, and then since then it's been a process of continuous growth, and it seems like you've always kind of found joy from that. So I'd be curious if you relate to that in your life with your cooking, with all that, and kind of what makes you tick and what your mindset is to continue to succeed.
oh boy. I feel happiness when I'm around food, when I'm in the kitchen. That's really when I feel most like myself. And I'll say I worked with a client once, and I always have the kids jump in the kitchen with me, and I'll get like paper chef hats, and we'll pull a little stool over, and the kids will cook with me. And one time I was wearing a chef hat too. And the little kid looked over at me and he said, "Do you have ratatouille under your hat?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Because your arms are moving like this." And like I just thought, like, wow, like this is the flow I have in the kitchen. And, it's just like, it's where it's where I excel. And, just it makes sense. And so, that's what makes me ultimately really happy, is just being around food and cooking, because it takes away any thoughts that are in my head. Um, whether it's about doing other things, or whether it's, any negative thoughts I might have or anything like that, it just all kind of clears away. So again, yeah, cooking, I'm happy. Satisfied, I'm not satisfied when I'm just showing up and cooking a meal. Um, I'm happy if the food tastes good, but I'm really only satisfied if I'm showing up as my authentic self. I'm showing up as an honest person, a kind person, a genuine human being, and being able to relate to my clients and talk with my clients. That's what ultimately, I guess satisfies me, is just showing up and being the best doing the best I can, trying my best. So yeah, I find a lot of joy in cooking and working with people. And, again, it goes back to that cooking for a purpose. Trying to help my athletes or clients, achieve whatever they're trying to achieve, whether, they're not an athlete, but, they're CEO of a company. It still takes a lot of mental focus and a lot of energy and all that. So obviously food is part of that just, makes a big difference. But yeah, I hope that kind of goes with your happy, not satisfied. But,
Yeah,
you know, but yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm always searching for new opportunity. I'm in a sense never satisfied with any dish I make because I always know it could be better. I always know it can be better. Even if I put something else that looks amazing and tastes amazing, I still leave saying, oh man, I could have made that so much better. Which
yeah,
is fun, right? Because cooking, there's no like stopping point, right? You can make a piece
exactly.
of chicken breast that tastes amazing, but maybe next time if you add this seasoning or cook it for this long or grill it instead of saute it, like it can always be better. So yeah, I'm always on the search to make better dishes, but also, be a better version of myself every time I go cook.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because I think it sounds like it's exciting to you that it can always be better, right? It's not like this, oh, I didn't do it well enough, like I got to do it better next time.
Yeah.
But it's like that's the sweet spot to me. Is like you're proud of what you did, but it's like there's another level here and there's a different way of doing this. Like that's what I think is really cool. And it seems like you really that's part of your approach. I have a couple questions. One would be you talked earlier about when you were young and discovered cooking that there was like anxiety and OCD and things like that, and cooking just like calmed it down. Um, is that still the case? Like, is that what do you feel some of that stuff and then cooking helps you, or have you kind of grown out of that, or where are you at with that?
No, same kind of thing. Obviously,
Yeah,
I've been working on that anxiety and OCD my entire life, and
yeah,
but yeah, it's that same thing. Even if it's a stressful morning or anything like that, immediately I step in a kitchen and thoughts go away. It's
hmm,
just because my focus is totally on the food that's in front of me. My focus is on my hands and what I'm doing with my hands, and I'm really not thinking about much else, which is so cool. Such a good feeling to be in a space that is just like the focus is all on
yeah.
what you're doing in the moment. And so yeah, I love it. And that's where every time I'm in a kitchen, I know it's the place I'm supposed to be. Like it's
Yeah.
where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. I think some really interesting takeaways from that are like number one, cooking didn't necessarily cure quote unquote like OCD or anxiety, but it's a tool to help sort of cope and make you feel more better and productive, I would imagine. And then I think another important takeaway is not that like, oh, this guy he cooks and it makes him feel better. Maybe I'll cook and I'll feel better. Maybe you will.
Right.
But I think it's
Right.
that there is something like that for most people, I would imagine.
Hmm.
I know for me it's been a variety of different things, but like I've discovered that I was a teacher before. I was a band director, and like you sometimes you get in that flow state of teaching and all you're thinking about is that moment and doing that and nothing else matters. I think sometimes exercise is that for me, and now like speaking to groups of people and like trying to connect and engage, that's where I really feel that, or on the podcast. And but I think when people know that there is something out there that can sort of help them like that, and find that flow state and find that calmness,
Hmm.
that searching for that is a worthwhile endeavor. And even if you are older than being in second grade when you were fortunate to discover that, right? Like I don't think there's a too old or a too whatever to go on that journey and try and discover that, because it can really change your life for the better, I think.
Definitely. And then, also, I think what I also learned was how to apply those things anxiety and OCD into what I was doing, and being in the kitchen with OCD, being obsessive about being organized and
Oh,
clean
interesting.
and all that. Like,
You channeled it in a positive
exactly.
way. Yeah.
Exactly. How could I take the anxiety, and kind of use it to help my cooking? And part of that was I always knew I had to be on time. And that's what I was always so anxious about, was timing and stuff. But when I was in the kitchen, that helped me because I
Mm,
always knew I was going to be able to get the food out on time.
yeah.
And I could be efficient in doing so. And yeah, so I definitely learned how to take those things and, use them in a positive way in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think too, I feel super anxious sometimes. And it's just like, I don't know why it's crept up and then all of a sudden it just kind of consumes you, and I think that's sort of just
Yeah.
part of anxiety. But I've just realized, and it's sort of going along with what you're saying, is like taking action always makes me feel better. It's like
Hmm.
at least for me, I paralyze myself and I'm thinking about things and I'm like, oh, I have all this stuff to do. And I'm just like kind of sitting there and I'm not really doing it. And I'm just stuck in this sort of purgatory state. But as soon as I take action, it's like it's an immediate cure, where it sounds like for you taking action, going in the kitchen, cooking, it's like
Yeah.
immediately it's that stuff starts to flow out of you. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that this is the be all end all
The
curative
cure. Yeah.
thing. I'm
No.
not saying that at all. I'm just saying my experience, and it kind of sounds similar to you, not through cooking, but just through taking action. That's how you can channel it and be productive, and also probably feel a little bit better at the end of the day.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, you're in this sort of rare circumstance a lot over your career, I feel like, where you're around high performance athletes and CEOs and just like super successful people that want to be dialed in with their diet or whatever it is, but you're around these people. I'm curious, like, you must get to talk to them a decent amount. Like, is there anything that you've picked up from them on their mindset, or any things across the board that you see show up time and time again with different people and how they approach their schedule or their life, or any of that stuff? I think you have an interesting insight into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with a lot of my clients I've worked with, one thing I've learned is it's not just one thing that's going to make you successful. It's going to take a lot of different pieces to make you be the best you can be. So for me, it's not just going to be the cooking that, helps me be successful. It's going to be the work I do outside of the kitchen, whether it's, working on myself, or staying connected with friends and family, or self-care, working out, really taking all the pieces and then bringing it to what I do. So I see that with athletes, which is right, not just like working out to be a strong, fast football player, but doing the stuff for recovery, doing the stuff for mental focus, and working with mental coaches um, and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say nutrition too is only a little piece of it when it's being a professional athlete. You're obviously spending a lot of time in the gym. You're spending a lot of time in meetings, watching film and breaking down film, and obviously just eating healthy is one piece of it. So what I've learned is definitely to work on many aspects of my life, which is self-care and yeah, yeah, I mean, just taking all the different pieces and then bringing that in the kitchen with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And I mean, the self-care piece of it, I feel like you can't talk about that too much, because as somebody that did no self-care, I may have talked to you about this, I can't remember, but it was like, I didn't wake up at 4 in the morning. Maybe I was going to bed at 4 in the morning, like it was just, that's something I did. And because I paid the price in a lot of ways because of it, talk about anxiety was way more extreme and like just foggy and all this stuff, until I got serious about taking care of myself, and everything
Right.
changed. I literally everything about my life. And I feel like so often when I talk to people, they've had like either a similar experience, or successful people so often, I think, prioritize wellness and self-care and all those things. That includes nutrition and working out, but also, like you said,
Right.
like these people that are really successful are talking to mindset coaches, and like they're working on all that, and that's got to be at least half the battle, I would imagine,
Right.
in being,
Definitely.
especially high performance athlete, where there's no margin for error and there's so much pressure and all that stuff. Like, if you don't have a solid foundation, the house of cards, I think, comes down quickly. So
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. So I want to pivot a little bit and ask you a question that I ask everybody, and it was sort of some of the inspiration for starting this podcast, because I think a lot of people who are successful across the board in different industries maybe have had somebody call them lucky or perceived something that they did as luck. And of course, there are elements of luck to everyone's life, but I think a lot of it is, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot that went on under the surface. So I'm curious if you relate to that, if you have a story about that, if there's anything in your life that jives with this idea of like creating your own luck.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that same story I told you about the high school chef of the year contest. I
Yeah.
mean, I really felt, especially in the moment and still to this day, that boy, I was lucky because unlike the other kids that competed in that contest, like I didn't go to a culinary high school or really work in a restaurant at the time. Like I said, I was more focused on playing basketball and volleyball and hanging out with my friends. And yeah, I mean, I literally just cooked lunch for my friends. Like they'd come over after basketball practice or something, and I'd whip up a sandwich. So that was like the extent of my cooking. So, I mean, I think putting myself out there and submitting that recipe was, me in a sense creating my own luck that I then got picked top 10, to go down to Miami and cook. And then I mean, I don't. I think it was all a blur. I just like showed up, I cooked, and somehow I won this contest. And again, like that really opened the door to my career because it took so much pressure off me when going into college, and I was really able to just put down my head and take any free work. I would work for free. I'd do this, I'd do that, and yeah, that really, I still feel I was so lucky with that gig or with the contest, winning the contest. Cause honestly, I wasn't a very like strong chef at the time. I just, I felt like just cooking was my flow state and where I just felt like myself. And yeah, that was, to me, I felt that was pure luck winning that contest, honestly. But
Well,
again, being a not so confident high schooler, to be able to just submit the recipe and in a sense manifest it and just like kind of step away and just let it play out, and it played out for the better, and I'm very, very lucky and grateful that it went down that way.
yeah, no, I mean that's great. It's interesting though because it makes me think of this book called Range, that talks about like specialists versus generalists, and
Mm,
like it gets into how Roger Federer played a million different sports growing up, and he didn't specialize into tennis until much older and all this stuff. And obviously, he's like some people say the greatest tennis player of all time. Like it kind of reminds me of that because you're competing against these people that were sounds like hyper specialists and like
yeah.
cooking all day and probably taking private cooking lessons, and their whole life was cooking, and like you had a bunch of other stuff going on and this was part of it. And I wonder if it allows you to be more creative and think outside the box and do something a lot different than what would have happened if you were like those other people.
Yeah. Um, yeah, crazy. I mean, I think what that did too is I didn't put much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
It's like I was just this like high school kid from St. Louis, Missouri, didn't really work at a restaurant, cooked, made lunch for myself. And so I think I went down to that competition and didn't put much pressure on myself. Like I could see other kids coming down and saying, this is all I do. This is all I do throughout the day. I work at restaurants at night. I'm going to, be good at this. And they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So I went in with a easy feeling, and yeah, I it was a blur, man. I honestly don't remember too much because I think I just again that flow state just took over, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it kind of happened.
I think it's also sort of the case for having irons in different fires and sort of
Mm,
letting some different things happen in your life that don't have to be like do or die, and then following up and building your network. I know that doesn't seem totally related, but it kind of is, because it's just
Mm-hmm.
if you have a lot of things going and you're talking to a lot of people and you're creating relationships and you're trying this and you have a thing over here and maybe you have a 9 to 5 job, but you kind of try this over here. And there's like those
Yeah.
things eventually just kind of start to congeal in ways you wouldn't expect. And then all of a sudden you have
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that you never would have thought of. And to me, that's the idea of creating luck, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
even with you, you feel like you got lucky, and maybe you did, I don't know, but at the same time, it's like you were cooking, you were doing different things, you were putting yourself out there, you were trying stuff, and you pushed yourself to do this thing, and it worked out. I mean, you could very easily have not been doing that, and it never would have happened, and we might not be sitting here talking to each other,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a testament and a sort of advertisement for trying different things, making different connections with people, and trusting that if you continue to have good intentions and do stuff like that, then there's going to be positive outcomes from that you probably couldn't even imagine.
Yep, definitely. And by no means was it easy to, just do this contest. My mother had, constantly tell me to work on a recipe and to
Yeah.
practice it and all that. But again, I didn't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
But and that was, I think, for the better because I showed up and I just had fun with it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was very cool.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, what's next for you? Any idea? Like, yeah, it seems like you're enjoying what you're doing now, but have you any longer term goals or what are you thinking?
Yeah. So, something I've been reflecting on is if you asked me 10 years ago where I saw myself, I would have answered cooking for the best athlete in the world. That's what I wanted. I never dreamt of having the best restaurant in the world. I never dreamt of being like the best chef in the world. Like that didn't really, I wanted to work with the best athletes in the world because I knew that food would impact them only in a positive way if I were the one cooking for them. So luckily, the journey I've been on has brought me to cook for world class athletes, and I'm very lucky that I did that, and I'm enjoying it now. And it's great to build these very personal relationships with these athletes, and in a sense, be their mama. Cooking like home cooked food for them when
Yeah.
their mamas are living in other countries or in a different state, and yeah, I love that. So I'm definitely, one thing I've been working on too is just trying to stay present. And, that's obviously what I'm doing right now is just trying to think of the moment, taking it day by day. And I definitely have big dreams. And I mean, I really, you asked me that same question. I would think long term goal is still cooking for the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe not just football players or basketball players, but there are so many different sports all around the world. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up cooking for rugby players or cricket players or other Olympic sports that I haven't worked with. But yeah, so many. I mean, LA is opening my eyes to a lot too. So
Yeah.
I know, with cooking, like the possibilities are endless because at the end of the day, everybody's got to eat. So as a chef, there's always going to be somebody who needs to be fed. So, but yeah, I'm just again trying to take day by day, a day at a time, and really just working not only on myself and my relationships, and but yeah, just I don't know where I see myself in 10 years. Who knows? Maybe I'll be cooking breakfast for you at 4 in the morning.
I would love that. I would love that. That's my new goal. My new goal for
Yeah.
10 years from now is that. That's perfect. Well, cool. Hey, where can people learn more about you? Social media, website, what do you got going on?
Yeah, so definitely social media. It's at underscore Chef Brett. Somebody beat me to the punch with Chef Brett, but it's at underscore Chef Brett or my website, chefbretteisen.com. So I am for hire in the LA area, whether it's private chefing or very intimate dinner parties or even drop off like weekly meal prep. Yeah, it's definitely still new to the city and new to the area. So I'm at the point where I'm really starting to put myself out there more. And obviously with KTLA the other day, I
Yeah.
had no choice but to put myself out there. And, it's funny if I just went on the news and they were holding up a microphone asking me questions, I would have, been scared to death. But there was food sitting in front of me and I had a spatula in my hand and they were asking me questions. So I felt very comfortable. And but yeah, they can hire me for any different opportunities in LA. Happy to cook for you.
Cool. And I will say, you got to get your granola in the grocery
Oh
stores, man.
shit.
I had Chef Brett's granola and it changed my life. I need that stuff.
It hits different, huh?
Yeah.
It definitely does. It's chewy, clustery, fun stuff. I used to have a granola company, but then I started traveling a lot with the US ski team, and I had to decide, do I want to travel the world with the US ski team, or do I want to package granola? So I chose the
Yeah.
US ski team. So maybe, at some point I'll go back to the granola, but happy to send some to San Antonio
I
anytime.
hope so. I would love that. And yeah, I don't know, maybe you and I can together get this granola to the people, because man, it
Let's
needs,
go.
yeah.
I would love
Well,
that.
awesome. Well, this is great. Great conversation, and thank you for being so open about all kinds of stuff, and sharing more about your life and your mindset. And I know that people will get a lot out of this conversation. So thank you so much. And everybody, make sure check out Chef Brett on Instagram and his website. And yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, Dan.